He pōnei.
Ma sempre coraggiosa di Papa Francesco, che benediva Roma.
Meet Pope Leo XIV. The Catholic Church appoints its new leader. New Year's Assembly passes the first reading of the government's budget for the next financial year. And more than 80 delegates from across the Pacific have arrived on the island for the 138th Forum Fisheries Committee meeting. Ke he tau whisi siale moi tau whisi pua ha niue whekai whakalofalahi atu. Welcome to BCN News. Catholics worldwide are celebrating the appointment of their new leader, Cardinal Robert Prevost, who has taken the name Pope Leo XIV. Born in Chicago, Illinois, the new pontiff is the first American-born pope in history. He was elected yesterday after a conclave of cardinals gathered in the Sistine Chapel to choose a successor to Pope Francis. In his first appearance, the new pope greeted the world with the words, "Peace be with you all." The 69-year-old, formerly the prefect of the dicastery for bishops, has a background as an Augustinian and canon lawyer with experience ministering in South America. The Catholic Church is the third largest denomination on Niue according to the island's last census. Last month, Niue's Catholic community came together to pay their respects following the passing of Pope Francis. Niue's Assembly has passed the first reading of the appropriation bill that outlines the government's budget for the next financial year. While ministers and cabinet welcomed the bill presented by Niue's Minister of Finance, Lakepa MP Rhonda Siakiato Mailunga raised concerns about a $12 million deficit, calling on the government for more accountability. Esther Pavihi has the details.
The government's proposed budget is short of $12.5 million, proposing to spend a total of $68,110,000 with projected revenue of $55,579,000, noting that the expenditure budget includes $11,912,000 from donor support. The first Member of Parliament to speak on the merits of the government's bill is the Member of Parliament for the village of Lakepa, Rhonda Siakiato Mailunga. The MP commended the work of the government on the budget, but she also called for accountability given the $12.5 million deficit budget. Rhonda Siakiato Mailunga spoke for the first time about the tragic loss of her husband at the Niue Fall Hospital last year, calling for urgent improvement to healthcare in Niue.
While I stand in support of the vision this budget outlines, I also stand with a call for accountability, for transparency and for courage, not just in setting goals, but in telling our people honestly when those goals are hard to meet. Because ultimately, it is not just about what's on the page, it is what's felt on the ground. In Lakepa and across Niue, people want to see these commitments materialize. They want working water systems, the completion of our roads, support for the children and elderly, and most importantly, they want to see genuine efforts to increase salaries so that families can meet the rising cost of living. It is no secret that many of our families are stretched thin, that the cost of basic necessities continue to climb. However, we are lucky here in Niue, we can live off the land. So when we talk about economic resilience, we must ensure that it translates into the daily realities of our people, so they are not merely surviving but living with dignity. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, I must speak from personal experience. This past year, I lost my husband. And while I remain deeply grateful to the healthcare workers who did their best, I also carry the pain of witnessing the cracks in a system under pressure, where critical care can be delayed, where communication is inconsistent, and where families are left asking if more could have been done. So when I speak about the need for investment in healthcare, it is not abstract, it is urgent. It is personal, and I know I am not alone. We must ensure that when someone walks into Niue Fall Hospital, they are treated with dignity, speed, and the care they deserve. That our frontline staff are resourced, and that our people never feel like they are navigating the most vulnerable moments of their lives in isolation.
The Minister for Natural Resources, Honourable Asa Monainu, spoke in support of the government's appropriation bill and commended the staff of her ministry for their vigilance in managing their limited budget.
Honourable Speaker, I specifically want to also extend my sincere whakawele mahaki to the Ministry of Natural Resources, the directors and staff, for taking heed of the directives from the executive to be critically vigilant of the expenditure of the budget. There's definitely been a lot of careful considerations before each expenditure to ensure we are within the capacity and capability of the appropriated budget. The challenges are real, but you have all managed to work diligently within the very difficult circumstances of a very, very limited budget. I also convey my deep appreciation and whakawele mahaki to our people, our communities, and especially the private sector, for all your perseverance regarding the constraints with our limited budget to replenish services and product requests from yourselves to support the government of the day.
The government's appropriation bill is now before the Public Accounts Committee of the Niue Assembly, who will spend the next 2 weeks scrutinising the government's proposed expenditure for the next 12 months. This is the time when the Public Accounts Committee will summon the ministers and heads of government departments and agencies to appear before the committee. Rhonda Sekiato Mailunga is the Deputy Chair of the Public Accounts Committee.
As Vice Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, I want to reaffirm that our work does not end with the sitting of the House. The PAC will carry out its constitutional responsibility to scrutinise the estimates before us, line by line, with fairness and integrity. Our role is not to obstruct, but to strengthen, to make sure that every dollar allocated in this budget finds its ways into real outcomes for the people. We will be particularly focused on areas where the risks of fiscal slippage are most evident. High personnel spending, underperformance, and overly optimistic revenue projections. Looking ahead, Mr. Speaker, let us use this budget not just as a financial roadmap, but as a call to reimagine what is possible for Niue beyond 2026. As we prepare to shape the next chapter of our national strategic plan, this Assembly must be bold enough to ask difficult questions. What kind of nation do we want to be in 10, 20, or 50 years? How do we retain our people, protect our land, and preserve our language? How do we harness innovation while still staying rooted in our identity? This budget is not only about spending, but it is a reflection of our values, about what we choose to prioritize. And with those thoughts, Mr. Speaker, I commend this budget and I offer my commitment as the member for Lakapa and Vice Chair of PAC to help ensure that what we build is not only promised, but delivered. Go e lahi.
After PAC, the appropriations bill will be returned to the Whanreke Pule for the third and final reading. When passed, the government budget will fund the operations of the government from the 1st of July 2025 until the 31st of June next year. The largest government expenditure is the salaries of its workforce. Esther Pavihi, BCN News.
More than 80 delegates from across the Pacific have arrived in Niue for the 138th Forum Fisheries Committee meeting, which begins tomorrow. The meetings play a critical role in coordinating regional fishery policies, treaties, and sustainable management approaches for resources like tuna fisheries in the Pacific. Pre-forum meetings began at the Millennium Hall on Tuesday. Although the Niue government's press release did not specify key discussion topics, one expected issue is the Trump administration's withdrawal of USAID funding to the Pacific, which the Minister of Fisheries raised during budget deliberations yesterday.
Honourable Speaker, the freeze on the US treaty by the new US administration has also impacted on our ability to contribute to the recurrent budget, and it is obvious in the reflection of the budget. However, we are trying to find innovative ways to counter those constraints.
This year's meeting marks Niue's second time hosting the event since 2009. BCN News will have more on this story next week. A Niue public servant has been stranded in New Zealand for over a month after being stopped at Auckland's borders due to unpaid student loans. Frank Sioneholo says custom officers prevented him from returning to Niue, citing the outstanding debt of more than $80,000. But Sioneholo believes the Niue government should have settled his loans when he returned as a government employee in 2004. Esther Pavihi has more.
Frank Sioneholo has written to the Prime Minister, Dalton Tangilangi, to help him return to Niue and asking that the government of Niue pay the $80,000 he owes in student loans. The New Zealand government in 2016 took a strong stance on those people who absconded on their student loans. In January of that year, a teacher from the Cook Islands was the first person stopped at the border because of unpaid student loans. Frank Sioniholo, in a statement to BCN News, says that he believes that his student loan should have been cleared under the Niue government's student loan reverse scheme at the time when he returned in 2004. Unfortunately, he said he was excluded from that support, and to this day he feels that he was unfairly treated. The Deputy Secretary to Government, Gayleen Tasmania, in a statement to BCN News, says that they do not have all the details pertaining to the arrangement between the public servant in question and the New Zealand Government's Inland Revenue Department. She says that the public servant has applied for remote work and that is being considered by the Public Service Commission, but that is not a permanent solution. Tasmania says that they take this opportunity to encourage all persons who have student loans outstanding who continue to make repayments and to follow the process of the New Zealand Inland Revenue Department through their website. Meanwhile, Frank Sioniholo cannot return home until his $80,000 student loan is paid. Esther Pavihi, BCN News.
Local knowledge holders gathered for a workshop this week hosted by the Department of Environment to assess Niue's rare plant species. Senior scientist Dr. Peter Heenan from Manaki Whenua Landcare Research facilitated the workshop. He has been assessing Niue's flora since January last year.
So Niue has about, the latest checklist we have for the flora has about 200 native species to Niue. And it was fairly evident to me when I started looking at this, the flora and the type of species that were here, that there was quite a number of them that were not easily found and quite rare. And so I applied to this Mohammed bin Zayed Conservation Fund to get a grant to come up here and do a threat assessment with the Department of Environment, so Huggard and Hayden and the team here.
The open meeting saw 20 locals attend over the 2 days, contributing their knowledge on the list of the island's 200 rarest plants. The assessment also found most near threatened.
The goal really is to, with the workshop, it's to collate and coordinate and bring together the local knowledge plus the scientific knowledge, so it's that Indigenous science blend, and let's assemble all that information with the threat assessment we're doing so we can say, okay, you know, this group of species are the most threatened ones, and that all relates, that feeds into Department of Environment and Department of Ag and Fish and Forestry, their policies and practices around forest management and ecosystem management. If you've got a list of species that you know are rare, you could target them for some conservation actions. You can seek further funding for some conservation initiatives. But to be perfectly honest, apart from raising the issue and assembling the information, it's for the local community to decide what they want to do with it.
Dr. Heenan will return in June to host a science workshop for students at Niue High School alongside Otago Museum. Monday flights resumed this week, marking the beginning of the tourism season. Flights will now arrive to Niue on Mondays and Fridays. The island also expects yacht arrivals this month, including the World ARC Cruise on the 20th. Hospitality leaders say they're looking forward to a busy season with higher tourism forecasts expected this year. Meanwhile, the cyclone season has also officially ended for Niue. The tropical cyclone season, which ran from November to April 30th, saw 4 cyclones form, but none exceeded Category 3. Tropical Cyclone Pita was the closest, passing 30 kilometres from the island in January. Niue's Met Service Director Rosie Misiepo says, while the cyclone season has ended, it's still possible for cyclones to form outside of the season, so stay prepared. And in sports, top Tahitian table tennis champion Ocean Belrose visited Niue last week to explore Niue's interest in the sport. An 11-time Pacific champion, Belrose, who works with the International Table Tennis Federation in Tahiti, spoke with BCN News about his ambitions to grow the sport locally.
Actually, so ITTF Oceania has a new project, and so as a Oceania Development Officer, they send me to Pacific Islands to develop table tennis and to relaunch the Oceania Development Program. So Yeah, I've been to Samoa just before Niue.
His visit included an appearance at a tournament held in Alofi last week, aimed at boosting local interest in table tennis. Last week, Niue's BCN team commemorated World Press Freedom Day, celebrated on May 3rd to promote and celebrate press freedom worldwide. Mere Satakala spoke to past BCN journalist Inangaro Vakafi, who shared her highlights and challenges while working in the media.
I think one of the highlights, I suppose, working for BCN while I was in Niue was the opportunity to help share stories from our community, but also news and articles that provide our community with the information that they need in order to make some informed decisions. So I always took that role quite seriously, but there were also challenges, challenges growing up or working in a small community means that there are a lot of conflicts of interest. You could be related to the person, they might be your friend, the people that you attend church, and there's all these different connections. And sometimes when you are writing stories that have to hold people in positions of authority to account, uh, doesn't necessarily make you everyone's best friend. So there were those types of challenges. And there were instances where sometimes people would feel a certain way and people will start to question your role and even threaten your job security. So those are some of the challenges of trying to work in the media space within a small community, within an island where you're related or everybody.
That's our show for tonight. If you have a story to share, you can contact us on our Facebook and Instagram page, or you can visit us at the Met Office. A special whakalofa atu to our viewers from across the region and to our partners at Pacifica TV. I'm Moana Makapiluli, Monoi nei po.